that I haven't sent her yet. She will find that all. All right, hi Mavis. Thanks for joining us. So I am recording this for Cam and Rosemary because they also wanted to be involved in this. And I think Tim is coming too. But he just arrived home, so he might be a little late. Okay. So we'll just wait a moment for Saverna to come, and then we'll get started. So how's everybody doing?
Mavis, on Sunday you've been, have you been going over to like Ann's place or somewhere to, and then they can participate in the service too? Is that what you're doing, or you're going somewhere? I can't hear you.
I think you're still muted.
Are you muted? She's
Mavis?
muted.
Okay, I'm muted.
There we are. There we
so
are.
Doug, were you talking to me?
Yeah, I was just wondering on Sundays, so someday you've been going to another place and
No,
and
I've been in the condo all the time. The only ones were Good Friday. I went into the social room, and 3 joined me, and then Easter Sunday 2 joined me. But since then, I've been in my own condo.
Oh, yeah.
And downstairs, Karen has been signing in on her iPad. Karen Bradfield.
Great.
Good.
So one little tweak just while we're waiting that I'm thinking the co-host at the service can do is like for this coming Sunday, Margaret's going to record names to phone numbers. So recurring phone ins, we can quickly go in and change their name without, that couple of minutes of asking people to respond and confirm their phone number. So that's just the little thing we can do.
Yep, that's nice.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Also, while we're waiting for Saverna, I was just thinking about the kinds of things we want to achieve tonight. And my own thinking is that we'll go away with an idea of the schedule of the weeks of Monica's absence. Just, do we have certain weeks that somebody's spoken to lead the service? And then where we know we don't have anyone, and just have that calendar kind of sketched out. But I guess I'm thinking of the weeks where we have nothing planned, then where we'd find out which congregations are broadcasting remote services that would welcome our members. And maybe we promote it to, why don't you do a tour of Western Canadian United Churches and just take that opportunity, and we could schedule 11:45 coffee time Zoom sessions every Sunday. Otherwise,
yeah. Yeah, some of this I want to see what people are. I want to see what people have actually decided to volunteer for. Once we have a few people who are waiting, we'll have to wait for. And then we may decide we only do like 2 live services a month, and then let people do other things, because especially in the summer, it could be challenging to get people to even do every Sunday.
So can you see my screen okay?
You'll see that the list includes already some of the things that Bruce and Cecile have volunteered to do already.
And so those Sundays that Bruce, Cecile, Brittany, and Rowan have signed up, those are going to be sort of like outdoor sorts of services where an emphasis on meditation and enjoying sort of natural wonder, that kind of stuff. Is that the way those are
Yeah,
planned?
I think so for the most part.
Kind of more a contemplation of nature sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Okay.
All right. Well, Saverna's wrestling with technology, and she may actually end up coming to sort of eavesdropping 6 feet away from me in the office. We'll see how it goes. So I'm just going to play this. I think I can play this. How does this work? There we go. So we're doing something a little new, and I guess it's kind of like, you know, something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Do you want to pull up a chair? Okay, pull up a chair. Okay, can you see okay?
Yeah.
You're okay?
Yep.
There you go.
I'll sit in this chair.
So we're not inventing everything from scratch, but we are doing a little bit of new stuff. So we're going to have some conversation tonight around COVID and worship, and some thoughts around a bare bones kind of worship. And then I also have a presentation on Zoom Beyond the Basics. So anyone who wants to hang around for that can hang around for that.
Yes.
Okay. If you want these slides or if you want that chart, I just can send everything to folks. And of course, this is interactive, so lots of conversation. So first thing I wanted to talk about is this is some of the resources that we're getting from the National Church and some of the webinars that I've been taking. There's been a lot of webinars on how to deal with trauma. And one of the things that they shared was our response to any kind of an emergency. And this is coming from ministers who are trained in trauma response, who have been involved in everything from Fort McMurray fires to Ontario disasters and floods and things. And they talk about the initial incident has an impact, and our immediate response is to be heroic. Try and, you know, do something. So there's this adrenaline rush, and we are trying to do something or fix something, or we've got this energy and we want to use it. And so we can become heroic. And one of the phrases that somebody said the other day is, if you sprint at the beginning of a marathon, you lose your supper at the end of the marathon. So what happens is people who try heroic efforts, and I think I kind of did that too, I think we all did, can often have a bit of a crash further on down. This is very typical. So there's a honeymoon time, there's a disillusionment time, and then there's a reconstruction time. And one of the reasons why there's been so much education put in place for ministers is that statistically speaking, if you look at the ministers that were in New Orleans and that area during Hurricane Katrina, there's something like only about, I'm thinking 10 to 20% of them were still in those churches 2 years or 4 years later. And so ministers' self-care is something that we know is hugely important. And so that's one of the reasons why we're giving this information, and people are doing what they can with that. So any thoughts? Do you have a sense of where you are at, or are you recognizing yourself in there? Or are you going, this doesn't fit for us?
I'm definitely on the downward slope after the honeymoon, personally.
He's getting disillusioned.
Oh dear.
I'm not trying to be funny about that. That's just totally where I put myself. How about you guys?
I'm actually kind of enjoying all of this. So being isolated and working from home it suits me perfectly. You know, I'm doing almost all the same things. I'm just doing meetings on Zoom. And I'm not seeing my daughter. Aside from that, and church and stuff, no, I'm as busy as ever, busier actually, with admin things. So, you know, I'm probably flatlined.
The one good time to be flatlining there, Mavis.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm.
For myself, I'm finding that there's a lot of information that comes in email when I'm in the middle of my business day. I still work not full-time, but close to full-time. I have 2 jobs, and I know Mike works full-time. So a lot of the information that comes from the church, I actually can't deal with in the moment that it is
Yeah,
sent.
you're right.
And that's really challenging.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm at actually. Um, Probably somewhere between disillusionment and honeymoon, but I'm not sure. It's not disillusion. I mean, it's just like work is kind of different, but sometimes I think they're going a little off the deep end in some areas. In other areas, it's like, could we do a little more planning and be organized a little more? But um,
How do you get
actually,
that?
I thought church has done I thought Monica and other people have done a pretty good job. We got ourselves, organized, and it was like, okay, we're doing church as much as possible, and that was great, And I think, people have jumped in and helped out, and I really
I
appreciate that.
agree.
And I got well, some of you, I think only Mavis won't have seen this, but we got a email from Cecile explaining all the stuff of all the things that who she gone and talked to and who the people are, and she's been dropping off little worship kits and everything, and I'm going, oh, this is really cool. I had no idea, but and various people have jumped in and done various things, and it's just that's kind of what happens at our church. There's a need, and people jump in and do what happens that they need to, and I have some challenges when I know that there are people who are sort of holed up in their houses, and I go, and they don't want to interact with anybody, even hardly by phone or by anybody, and I go, that I find a bit challenging, and I don't understand. But at the same point, it's some. I'm going, it's one of these things that happens, and you just have to. I go, okay, follow the rules and try to do as best you can, and go on from there. And don't stress. One of these things, don't stress yourself out over something you can't change. Change those. And worry about those. When we see people doing things that I find unusual, sometimes I find it hard to understand, but you just sometimes some of it you just have to accept and say, okay, that's what you want to do, fine.
Yeah. How about Sir?
So,
I'm on the disillusioned part. Couldn't get into Zoom. couldn't set up a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
right, that too.
Our
Yeah.
internet comes and goes.
Yeah, it can be the behind the scenes thing. A photograph that was given to me and is still around somewhere from my supervisor when he went on his sabbatical is a picture of a swan on a still pond. And he said, a swan is a really good image for ministry because they look serene and yet their feet are going like crazy under the water. So, yeah, that's pretty typical. So,
Kind of like the iceberg, right?
oh, definitely. So 3 quick key questions that we were asked earlier in a Thursday afternoon United Church Zoom workshop for ministers was, what do the people in your congregation need the most right now? And I think one of my challenges has always been with this congregation is it's very diverse. And so what works for one person may not work for another person. Cecile mentioned that we are sending out kits. I think we're making 14 or 15 kits, and we're dropping them off to people, everyone from like Wendy Chanel is getting it because her email is sporadic. Anne Martin is getting it. Mary Gieselson,
A few other Anglican ladies.
Christabel Lyons at PVL,
At PVL, yep.
as well as Barb Wilkinson. So there's 14 of those getting produced and sent out. And that's working for some folks, and for other folks, they're quite happy with the recording that's on Facebook, and for other folks, they're quite happy with the Zoom. So it's a very diverse congregation, and I think, yeah. Do you have any sense of what they're needing right now?
No.
I kind of feel, to whatever degree it's accurate, I feel that if our congregation has the opportunity to connect and have the, you know, the Sunday thing happen in some fashion, that I think a lot of people appreciate it. Now they might be joining with their screen or just by phone, or some might be on their own with a package. But you know, I think that at least we're meeting our congregation there, because honestly, I feel like I've looked at how we could probably do things better. It's more like, I know I could do something more or better. And of course, we can always do better. But I kind of feel like we've done something, that we've been able to provide a service every Sunday. And there's a point where, you know, people either will engage or they will not. They'll make a choice. And that's kind of where I feel about your first point, is we've given our congregation the opportunity to connect, whether they take that opportunity or they don't.
Yep. And we got 2 thank you cards dropped off today from a couple of people who are getting these packages. Mm-hmm. And some of them had a $5 in and one jingled. I think there's a few loonies in there. So, you know, the people are responding.
Yeah. I think people are responding very well to the variety, and I think that's a need that we should continue as long as we need to. I think that the connection to familiar people is really appreciated now. And so the multiple members that are involved in services is really appreciated. The pastoral service, when, you know, the kits are dropped off, that's really, really appreciated. It's the reach out, the being there for the Anglican members, you know. So I really think we are serving more needs than we did before even.
I agree.
And we're reaching to at a distance too, you know, and in addition to little thank you notes, you know, some e-payments have been coming through. There's not notes attached to them, but I bet we've had 5 different people send e-payments, and some, well, and you know, one was 300, one was 200, and
holy doodle.
And they're outside of the norm, not the normal ones. So I think the community is really appreciating what we're doing and rising to the occasion.
Good.
And the other piece of that, the other way that Severna and I have been trying to connect with the community is we're noticing that when we put out Learn to Knit or Learn to Crochet kits, that they are evaporating when we least expect it. And the same with masks. We've been putting out little mask kits with patterns and fabric in them. And you were saying Severna just took a batch of fabric that were too small for the pattern. You want to tell them, share that story?
Yes, there's a lady up by the inn who's making masks. They're a different type of mask than our kit is. And she's done over 180, and she's shipped them out to Calgary, all over the place. So she's given me the pattern, and I'll make some for our folks, because it's a very simple pattern, actually simpler than the directions Monica got off the internet.
And she was going to make a few for us too, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah. So when people come back, they have an option of having a mask to wear if they don't bring their own. And these are made of cloth, and they're washable.
yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
The
Interesting.
supplies on the front was absolutely brilliant in terms of showing the community that we are continuing and we're here. And that's in a way been our, sort of poster for the community, a live one.
Yeah, and we, every so often I haven't been, the last couple of weeks I haven't been doing it as good, but I have been trying to rotate stuff and put new things out that people can take. We're finding that if it's in an individual Ziploc bag, people are more likely to take it home than if it's in a bag where you have to pull one out. So we're changing that around again a little bit. And kids' books, all of a sudden I put a couple kids' books up in Ziploc bags and they were gone like that.
Rather than out of the bin.
So we just put out we now have 3 bins out front, and one is adult books, one is magazines, and one is kids' books. And I haven't been looking, because I usually am coming through the back door because I want to have a separate entrance for myself.
Yes.
So I haven't been noticing things disappearing out of the bins, but I couldn't believe that almost all our old Broadviews are gone. Mavis, you'll be pleased to see how we've decluttered almost all the magazines that were on that front table when people come in.
Yay!
I could not believe it. I was like, they're taking these magazines? These are church magazines. Oh my goodness. But somebody was. And we have enough books. Do not bring any more books. The library was
covered with books.
The library was throwing books out, and we got one of their shipments of books that they were heading out, and it was amazing. I mean, some of it's like westerns and stuff, but then you'll have books like The Book Thief, which is a really good book. If Mavis, if your book club hasn't done The Book Thief yet, I can highly recommend it. So there's book club type books. So the last question really had both Cecile and myself scratching our heads. What is sustainable for you as clergy and worship leader? What is sustainable for others involved? And I think I was a little too heroic at the very beginning, and I tried to do maybe a little too much. So then that question of what is sustainable, especially now that I'm going on sabbatical. So one of the things I was hoping to let everybody know is when we first did the worship service, it was live to Facebook, and it was cutting in and out, and there was static, and it's just, and I just said to Bruce and Cecile and Doug, just 5% better. That's just a little bit better every time. It doesn't have to be huge. And like Mike, really good example, when you were hosting last Sunday, you put up the bulletin and you were scrolling the bulletin, and Tim realized it, and then he didn't have to scroll it. So then he put on the big television screen my full script, so I didn't have to look down at my tablet so much, and I could just look at the camera. And that made that go a lot more smoothly. So just a little tweak every time.
I listened over my telephone. It was perfectly clear.
Good.
Robbie sort of came in and out, but
Mhm.
once people started talking, it was fine. So people listening on the phone, hey,
Good.
I found it fine.
Good. Okay.
My tablet wouldn't work for me.
Hmm.
That's why I did the phone.
So let's keep these three quick key questions in mind, and we'll go on to the next slide.
Can we go back to the don't? We didn't deal with the second one
Yeah,
particularly.
Theology. No.
I
Or
think
do you want to talk about that later?
it'll come out, and I think for some of us, we sort of went through that pretty thoroughly in Worship 101. But I think it'll come out in some of the other conversation and slides that I have lined up for us. So, what is worship for, and why do we worship? And these are some of the things that was brainstormed on Thursday afternoon's workshop. One of the comments was echoing what's already happening in heaven. I thought that was a very poetic artistic view, or to sustain and uplift God, to help people enter into and deepen their relationship with God, to provide a touchstone, which is really all about connection to each other, to God, to our world, to a greater meaning, keep our community of church together, helping each other and helping those beyond us as well, to know God and serve God more fully. And someone said it's a family reunion every week. I like that one. We are the presence of God for each other, equipped to go into the world, and it reminds us there's something more. So those are some of the things that we brainstormed. Is there anything in there that really jumps out at you, or anything that needs a word tweak, or anything that's missing?
I think that there is an element of stimulation that people need and want.
Do you mean it in the way like you feel it's a recharging experience in a way?
A recharging and food for thought, and how can we, either cope better or help others more. So how can we walk as Jesus walks among the people? But the other one here that one really resonates with me is we are the presence of God to each other. And I think now what's happening right now, that's what people are wanting. Connection and some soothing presence.
Comfort, oh, comfort my people. One of the classic calls to ministry. Yeah. Yeah. And I certainly have noticed that. I have been much more focused on pastoral care and mental health. And even in the hymns that I'm choosing and the prayers that I'm choosing are more soothing and more quiet. And Margaret, I was relating to something that you posted on the Robbie script, and I was saying to Tim, oh my gosh, it sounds like I'm hypnotizing everyone to sleep and they're going to die of boredom or something. And he's like, you know what, Monica? I couldn't listen to my voice. I should have edited out all my ums and ahs when I was reading scripture, but I just could not listen to my own voice. And I was remembering that the most famous actors don't, like Maggie Smith has never gone to see a performance of herself. And I'm like, okay, it's okay.
Well, I watched it on Facebook and I didn't think it was that bad.
Oh, it was fine. It was great.
It sounded fine over the phone. It's just the connection from the service into Robbie was.
Yeah, that's.
You had to wait a few seconds longer than the flow was a little different, but
Yeah,
it was fine. The words came out perfect.
it's always a
There
little
was
rough.
no cutting out or anything.
What we're thinking of doing is giving what we're using. This is going to make all the techies laugh, but we have, I think, a $15 Rock Band microphone that we are using that plugs into the laptop, because normally it would plug into a Game Boy. And that's what we were using on with the microphone for sound on Sunday. So we're thinking of taking that to Lois and seeing if she can use it to get us loud a recording for her to try doing Robbie's script, because I think she's Robbie's biggest fan.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So on to the next slide. Are we ready? Or any other thoughts? Okay. So the big question is, what is sustainable? And one of the trauma experts, who's also a United Church minister, used this analogy to say, when we are in a situation where we are under stress and out of the normal of what we call our daily lives, it's like we've gone from spinning 7 plates to not being able to spin as many plates and keep them all up in the air. So we're going to be dropping plates when we are in an unusual or a new situation. I've noticed that since my son was in the hospital, I am forgetting things even more, and I am, trying to get things done as best as I can. So the more stress that we're under, the less plates we can spin. And so one of the questions is, when we're under stress, are we trying to spin the same number of plates that we've always been spinning? Are there some plates that we can let go of? So, I haven't been doing anything with mission and service. Mavis has, not Mavis, Cecile has been looking for mission and service things. That's been just something I've just stepped aside from and I haven't really focused on. And so when it comes to worship, we now know that when we come back into worship for the foreseeable future, one of the plates that is going to be taken away from us is singing. So that's one less plate to spin. And actually, that's probably a good thing, because copyright has added an additional plate for spinning. Because we are broadcasting and live streaming, we have a new license for live streaming the hymns, but not all the hymns are covered. So then there is a list that I go to and I look up, and I have to look up every hymn that I want to use and find out whether or not it is covered by our license or not. So that's an extra plate that I didn't know I was going to need to do. I have the materials for it. It does take a little bit of time, but if the singing of hymns is something that we're not supposed to do when we come back together anyways, maybe that's a plate we can just take right off the table when we do the worship planning. For those of you who want to continue that and do want to add a hymn or two, that list should have been given to Severna, and I do have it also printed out in a binder, and I can email that to everybody. So note to self, make sure I get that list to Severna. And it's already in your file, I think.
Monica, I hate to ask because it feels like it's a derailing, but I guess I'm just trying to be clear. So the hymns in our voices and our more voices hymnals, some of those we have to be careful about sharing in a Sunday service that is remotely broadcast, live streamed, as you say. That's the situation then, correct?
Yes, as long as we were inside our 4 walls and using our hymn books. Our hymn books had, basically we weren't photocopying our hymn books, so we didn't have to worry about copyright. We did have to worry about copyright for any songs that we had the words printed right in the bulletin. And that was another reason why I sort of backed off from PowerPoint, because I know a lot of churches do PowerPoint. Really, that is copyright infringement, because you're reproducing the words and putting them in a different medium than in your hymn books. And so,
Yeah, as long as you have, as you can put them on PowerPoint as long as they're covered by your license.
exactly. So, and given that not all the hymns in our hymn books are covered, I sort of steered away from that to a certain extent. And also because people said, nah, we don't really need to have more screens in our lives, generally. That was the general feedback I got at the time. So now that we are emailing our bulletins, printing off our bulletins, sending out our bulletins, not everyone that we are reaching has a copy of the hymn books, even though we did adopt out quite a few. And so when we do those words, I actually make sure that the hymns I'm choosing are covered under our copyright. And there's a variety of ways of doing that, of checking on that. But it might not be a bad idea for us to get into the habit of not having hymns while I'm gone, so that when we come back into live in-person worship, it won't be so much of a jarring shock. So that's a thought. There may be other plates. So when you sign up to do whatever you're going to sign up, whether it's hosting a coffee time and sending a link out to folks, or if you want to do a worship service, whatever that's going to look like, if you only want to spin one plate, go for it. If you think you can spin 2 plates, great. But don't feel like you have to do the full meal deal. Like we talked about in Worship 101, some of you know how to cook with blindfolded and one hand tied behind the back, and you can make the most amazing quiche, and it's great. Other people want the meat, potatoes, and vegetables, and that's okay too. So whatever you cook up doesn't have to be with the recipe. I do have the recipe in the Worship 101 notes if you didn't get to that one. But feel free to, make up a stew or a pie or whatever works for you. So this is a really, really basic recipe. Gathering, listening, and responding. That's it. Very, very basic. That's probably the simplest pattern for worship. And so if that's the plate you can do, that's great. It doesn't have to be any more fancy than that. And that can be a part of how we host. So we're going to go to this worship service. We will gather together. We'll send out the link. We'll listen to the service. And then we will respond maybe together by having the coffee time chat. And that's fine. I'm really excited that McDougall has invited us already. There are churches, the moderator, Right Reverend Richard Bott, was doing a worship service every Sunday, and he's stopped doing it because there's so many churches that are doing that. But I also know that there's a lot of other churches that aren't doing this at all, and they are sending people off for links, or they're doing like the worship packages that we're doing, and they're not doing anything live at all. So everyone is coming up with their own way of doing things. And so you could go to a different church 3 times a Sunday and go to 300 worship services, and that's just the United Church. So that's kind of cool. I'm just going to go through the next slide pretty quickly, because this is how we normally do it, or how I normally do it. And that's the gathering, the words of welcome, the announcements, prayer of approach. Again, if you want this formula, that was in the Worship 101 package, which I can email. Prayer of confession, words of assurance, response to the assurance. All of this is totally optional, and make of it what you will. Think of this as the meat and potatoes. And like I said, if you want to make a casserole or a stew or a quiche, that's fine too. Then we have the listening, and that's where the scripture reading comes in, and then a reflection. I don't think I've ever done a 15-minute reflection or sermon. My preaching professor used to get really frustrated with me because he wanted a 20 to 30-minute sermon. And just a couple of weeks ago, there was a seminar by someone down in the States talking about simplifying the worship service. And he strongly recommended that if you're used to doing like a 45 to 50-minute long sermon, you might want to cut it down to 20 minutes. Because people aren't able to sit and watch a YouTube or whatever it is for a sermon that's 45 minutes long. And I'm like, oh, I can't imagine doing a 45-minute sermon. So that's a piece of the listening. And then responding, we have our invitation to the offering, we present the offering, and we have our prayers and the prayers of the people. We light candles. We do the Lord's Prayer often. And then we have our commissioning and sending forth and our blessing. Again, for those of you who are in Worship 101, I have a lot of cut and paste resources. I very seldom write my own. I'm writing more of my own now than I have been, but I still tend to do the cut and paste, and all those resources are electronic and paper version. So change it up. Your congregation may not use all 3 parts every week, or maybe some of the listening will be in the responding or whatever. Also, the order of hymns can vary widely from congregation to congregation in the United Church. And again, how many plates do we want to spin? Keep it simple. A little bit of style and vocabulary. These are the same prayers. Oh God, we confess that at times our relationships as music makers have not been what they could be. There's been discord and dissonance. As opposed to, oh God, as singers of your song, we're sorry when we fall short of your harmony. At times we ruin your melody. So very, very concrete example of how to keep things simple linguistically, and that makes it clearer and easier to understand. That's a good reminder to myself. And one of the things I said in Worship 101 is the very first thing that you do. Does anybody remember the first thing that you do when you're planning a worship experience? My finger isn't showing up in the dark. First thing that you do is pray. Last thing that you do is
Right.
pray. But
be thankful.
Pray and be thankful. Pray to God, help. And then pray to God, thank you, what did I miss? And then pray to God again. So some things you can check out is what is the theme, diversity, inclusive, and hopeful. One of the interesting little bits that I was reading today was, are we talking at God, about God, or with God? And I thought that was a very interesting way of thinking about it. Are we talking at God, about God, or with God? And encouraging us to talk with God.
And you can sort of go, are we talking at the people, or are we talking with the people?
Yeah. Good catch. And again, does it talk to God as if God really is present, or does it talk about God in theory? And is there a moment of silence? A little touch of awe. That's something I'm finding a growing edge, but I'm working on it. And one of the things that they were saying is silence is really hard to do when you're doing it virtually.
slowly seems like a neat idea.
Read slowly is a neat idea, Sabrina said. Yeah.
So it's interesting how the time over this period, like we've seen the sun go from just blinding in your screen to now it's subdued a little. I felt like Moses in the burning bush for a moment there. It's like we're at a Zoom meeting with the flash of light.
At his smarties.
Just in Monica's room, though, it's just the way the light was coming in through the window behind you.
Well, and light is such a great image. I got this, so I'll just take it off so you can see it. I got this little angel from, I think Heather gave this one to me. And I was wearing it today as I was making supper in the kitchen. And all of a sudden there was a rainbow, a speckle of rainbows all around on the microwave. And every time I moved, this speckle of rainbows would just glitter all over the place. I could not figure out where all these rainbows were coming from. And it was that I was wearing this with all the little crystals on it. And I thought, oh, that was a little God moment for me, because you know the rainbow has so many theological resonancing, rainbow connection, Kermit the Frog song, or the Noah's story, or even the whole affirming process that we are thinking about. It was really a special.
Monica, you know what? I'm a terrible Zoom meeting participant because I'll derail every meeting every time. But you're talking about rainbows, and today marks the day of the death of a fellow that was referred to on the internet as the double rainbow guy. Did you know about this?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy became internet famous because he just posted a video and you just hear his voice and he's just about as excited as you can imagine a person describing these rainbows he's seeing. And honestly, it's kind of awe-inspiring because like you hear it in his voice. You think, is he a little bit mentally unhinged? He's so happy about these rainbows that he has passed today. So
He was in Yosemite, wasn't he? Yosemite?
Yeah, I think he wasn't a young guy, but he could have lived longer. It's just that was his time, right? Yeah.
I read about it, and I'm pretty sure I would have seen it, but I don't remember it. So I'm going to have to go back and find that video. But yeah, that's interesting. Interesting indeed. Okay, so that's that little bit. I'm going to go, if that's okay, unless you have questions or thoughts, I'm going to go to the Zoom slideshow here. Now,
and you will share those digital copies of the slides that you were just showing us?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay,
I can
it's
certainly.
pretty good, straightforward guides. Like it's just you have a structure to build on there.
Yep. Absolutely. And I do have some template files and stuff too that we had for Worship 101. So there we go. All right, now we're going to try this out. And this is something that I'm also hoping to use at Toastmasters. So this is a polishing up. Whoopsie, hang on a sec. I need to share my screen again. So you're all good techies, all of you. So hopefully this will be useful for you. I think just about everybody is at least familiar with at least getting on to Zoom. So I'm assuming that everyone's done that a few times.
Every year.
Except for Sabrina.
Yeah. How did you do the picture? That's cool.
Yeah. So beyond the basics.
Is that an image that you found?
Yep. Yep. So you've heard the quote, it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And so one of the ideas with Zoom is that we take small steps, and just if each of us learns one new thing today on Zoom, That's all I'm asking. If you can pick up more than that, great, just depending on your comfort level, because I know that everyone has different comfort with technology, and the more people we can have that learn how to do some of the hosting, co-hosting type work is better for all of us, I think. So we've got our basic screen. So there's new meeting, and there's join, and there's schedule, and there's share screen. I will be sharing, I'm going to change my password for my Rev file. So basically, if you are hosting a Zoom, what you would do is you would type in my email address, rev@auc@telus.net. You would enter in the password, which I'm going to come up with something clever and inspiring, like maybe inspiration or worship or love God or something like that. I haven't figured it out yet. I've got a few days. And then you are using my $20 a month Pro Zoom account. And yes, Mavis, I'm keeping the receipts. And then you can use the same login information and data that we've been using all this time. So you can just copy and paste the invitation.
That'll make it easier.
That will hopefully make it easier. So when you click on new meeting, you get start with video and use my personal meeting ID, PMI. And it gives you the number. I kind of blurred it out because with Toastmasters, I don't necessarily want them to have that number. Then if you click on the arrow 745, you get copy ID, copy invitation, and your settings. So this is a further step along the path. Normally, you are accepting an invitation, you don't have to worry about any of this. But when you are starting a meeting, this can be important. There's many different ways to find the information. This is one way, right off that first screen of new meeting. If you want to schedule a meeting, so today I scheduled the meeting ahead of time, and I keep using the same ID number for everybody. Now what they're doing is the newest version that I updated to today automatically generated a meeting password, and the meeting password was Monica, which makes me feel very egocentric, and I was very uncomfortable with that. So this is where you would change your password, is under the schedule meeting screen. Okay.
Do you have an option, Monica, to opt out of requiring a password?
I used to be able to, but not anymore because of the security problems. And one of the reasons why we're doing these settings is because you may have heard about Zoom bombing. Someone had their worship service, actually, they had someone drawing male anatomy in the Zoom, or sharing porn or things like that. So
Why is there a little tick box there? Was from before, they just haven't removed it?
they just have that. This is from before. I made this slideshow 3 days ago, and it's already out of date, but only a little bit. Okay, so you can click that only the host has a video and the participants can have no video if you want to do that, and then nobody can do video. All they see is the little black box and the voice.
Mm-hmm.
The audio section here, I don't know if you can see my pointer when it moves. Can you see my pointer?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yep.
So you can have it telephone. And when we started using Zoom way back in September, we would phone in. So I'd be on the phone. I could see everything that was happening in the screen, but I had to use the phone to hear what was happening. So the technology has already changed in these 8 months. It used to be that we would get terrible feedback if we were doing it the way I'm doing it right now, because the computer would hear Mike's voice or Mavis's voice or Doug's voice, and it would rebroadcast that over and over again. You get a horrible feedback loop. So now we can have telephone and computer audio. We can even set it to go to our calendars. So when I set one up, this one was Thursday at 11 in the morning, it would go into my calendar. Now there's also an advanced options button down here as well. And when you click the advanced option, you get enable waiting room, enable join before host, mute participants on entry, only authenticated users can join, and automatically record meetings. Now there's also a spot here where I can put in alternative hosts. I do that now when people come in at the beginning of the meeting. I don't set it up ahead of time because I would have to know your email that you're using to get in, and it's like, psh. I don't use the only authenticated users because that would eliminate, I believe that would eliminate anyone who doesn't have their own Zoom account, which would be all of our people joining by phone. Enable waiting room. What that does is sometimes, like today, you came into the waiting room and it said waiting for host to respond. That also is a security feature that is added so that we can make sure, like if we have Joe Idiot who's a jerk right in their name, we're probably not going to admit that person, and that's one way to avoid some of this Zoom bombing. Most of the time, we probably shouldn't enable join before the host, but if I am doing a worship service and it's my first time, and I know that Doug or Mavis or Margaret or Bruce or Mike are also there and they're going to be helping out, I could actually have them join ahead of me so that if I'm scrambling trying to put things together at the last minute, Bruce can be starting up everything already. He's a co-host, and so I don't have to worry so much about if I'm late.
So do you have to set up a co-host?
You can set up the co-host if you want, but again, I'd have to know like an email, and that would have been really good for when Bruce was co-hosting, because then I would just pop that information in there and he could start the meeting early. He could also accept people as they came into the waiting room. So it's a very useful little added technology tip. And again, I can send you all these slides. Fun stuff, eh, Mavis?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this is called the back room, the things that you can do to set up the back room. Another one that's very helpful is mute participants on entry. That means that when I come in, if I'm a participant and I come in and I'm not quite sure of what I'm doing and I'm yelling at Severna, hey, Severna, shut the door, turn off the radio. I've got to, everyone across Canada hears me yelling at Severna to do that, and it's really multo embarrassing. What is worse is when I assume that it's going to be mute participants on entry and it's not. I've done that a couple times. I've embarrassed myself quite badly in the last month and a half, but luckily enough, everyone is doing it, so there's a lot of forgiveness floating around. Okay. So this is another way to do it, and that's with the personal meeting ID settings. So if we go back to that previous one, this was under schedule a meeting. You can do the same thing under personal meeting ID settings. Every time you see PMI, that's referring to this stuff. Again, there's your ID number. You don't have an option now with require the meeting password, video, telephone and computer audio. If you don't have that clicked, then people who are phoning in can't join. Again, you've got those same advanced options. There's a lot of controversy about enabling join before host. Again, whatever works, but this is another way of doing the same thing. Again, the back end, behind the scenes stuff. So having those settings in place can enhance security and help people feel more comfortable. Okay, I did not know this, but if someone's on the phone and they go *6, they can mute themselves or unmute themselves. I wish I had known this a month ago. And *9 will raise their hand. So that would be a good way of bumping it up 5% for Sunday if I started saying, by the way, folks, you can do this. Now, protocol for joining. When you go into and you are joining a meeting, you actually are allowed to test your microphone ahead of time and test your camera ahead of time. And especially for people who are not familiar with doing Zoom at all, that's actually a really good option. And if you do that and get into the habit of doing that if you're not sure, I like to recommend that people who are new to Zoom and still getting used to it, to join like 10, 15 minutes early if they can. So like poor Saverna, if I had been here earlier, I could help to make sure she got logged in. And my goodness, this is Zoom bingo. And I've heard just about all these. I think there's a lag. Yes, of course there is. Child or animal noises. Oh yeah. Can you hear me? If I had a nickel for every time I heard someone say on Zoom, can you hear me? I would be a millionaire and I would be retiring early and I'd be investing with Mavis's advice on stocks. So, test driving. Here's some review and some new stuff. So I'm actually going to stop my screen share now and I'm going to show you some of these dandy little things that you may not have noticed. So let's go back to the Zoom. Oh, let's see. How do I share this? So I'm going to share this. See how, no, that won't. Oh, darn it all. Okay, I'm going to have to stop sharing that. So when you wave your mouse, you will see mute, stop video, security. Do you see all those things at the bottom there?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, if you click
Yes.
up on your mute, you see a little pop-up menu.
Mm-hmm.
There's microphone. So this is something that Tim and I use when we're fiddling around with microphones because we were using a camera that had a built-in mic as opposed to the laptop built-in mic. When you were doing this, using the laptop is quite fine. Speakers, we just use the same as whatever's built in. Test your speaker and microphones. Can you hear ringtone? So you can do that. You can actually do that before you even enter the room. You can switch to phone audio. You can leave the computer audio, and there's even audio settings. Now, audio settings, if you click on that, on the settings, you'll see test mic. And is everyone in that box where you see the settings now? Like going fast? See the automatically adjust volume? That actually was what was causing a lot of problems for Robbie.
Oh.
Not this Sunday, but last Sunday, we forgot to turn that off, the automatically adjust volume. So it adjusted for Robbie coming out of the computer so that when that video was over, it went back and we went back to me speaking from the pulpit. I went down about, I don't know, 20% in volume.
Yes.
So if you know you're going to have multiple people and you're not going to have a microphone, that's actually a good one to click off. Now, I should be always muting my microphone when joining a meeting. I can set that. I don't have to have the host set that. I can set that for myself, and that'll save me a lot of embarrassment. Press and hold space key to temporarily unmute yourself. That's fun. There's share screen, which is a little green thing. Enter full screen, maximize Zoom window, enable remote. So there's all those settings there. There's settings for chat. There's all kinds of little things here. There's a virtual background. I don't like the virtual background because I have such a busy background that it's really hard for my background. I was actually thinking if I could get a green sheet, like a bed sheet, hanging behind my head, but my laptop doesn't do that. So you can see it looks really odd. And some people download photographs. Somebody today was in, what was it they were doing? Oh, they had the northern lights rippling behind them, but it was going through their face as well, which was really distracting. There's recording, there's profile. So I have a profile picture. That's where you want to, if you want to put a profile picture in, you can. I don't want to even think about my statistics. Bandwidth. There's a spot for sending feedback. So you usually get that screen when you leave the Zoom meeting, but it's also there. And keyboard shortcuts, which I never ever use, but look at all those. Isn't that gorgeous? Ooh, always show meeting controls. No, I can't click on that. That's just Alt. So there's a lot of fun things in there. And they're working on closed captioning as well. I think that's cool. Maybe that's another way for me to bump it up next time. Mind you, closed captioning is probably pretty hit and miss. So going back to our main screen again, we've got the same thing with video cameras. You can choose a camera. You can go back to the settings. Security, that's more for the hosts. This is actually important for you when you're hosting. You can lock the meeting, which means at 10:45 or 10:50, you can actually click that and then nobody else gets in. So if my daughter slept in, she can't come to church at the last minute, or someone else was, Lois couldn't get in for some reason. So she missed everything except I think she arrived during the scripture reading. So you could click that and then that wouldn't happen. But here's one that says remove participant. And again, if we got a Zoom bomber, that's what we would use. The host would actually use that. So I could click and remove someone who wasn't a co-host, which means I could kick Mavis off right now, which I won't. As far as Zoom bombers are concerned, it's kind of like I'm not posting the advertisement to our worship service on my Facebook page. I'm posting it in the Athabasca United Church group. And that is a closed membership. I mean, we pretty much say yes to anybody who wants to come in and join it. But Mavis or myself, one of the administrators, actually looks through that when we get a request for someone to join. So they've been vetted. But if we were just putting it out there, it'd be like putting out your credit card in the public. If you dropped your credit card on the street, you have no idea who's going to pick it up. And so we haven't been advertising this meeting link publicly. We've been keeping it pretty private, so we shouldn't have any problems. But it's nice to know that if we do have problems, you click on the security button, you can click remove participant, and you can even report them if you need to. Okay. There's the participants. Now, when you are host, and actually, Mavis, I'm going to make you host so you can see this more. Make co-host. All right. So when you are a host or a co-host, you can hover over each person and there will be a more button. When you click on the more button, you can chat, you can stop their video. Poor Margaret. Ask to start the video. Thank you. I'm picking on you today. And then I can spotlight your video. So all of a sudden, usually what I set is I set speaker mode so that the speaker is always the big one. But I can actually highlight somebody else to be the big speaker screen. So I can spotlight Mavis. So now all of a sudden, Mavis is going to be the main screen. And now I'm going to do that to, now Doug's got his screen, his camera off, so we can't do that. The other thing that you can do in this mode is you can rename people. And Mike and Margaret have found that, and we've found that very, very helpful. Oh, there's Doug. So I'm going to make him the spotlight video, and then I'm going to rename him. There we go. So those are things that you can do. You can mute all. And you can unmute all. You have power.
I had on our Toastmasters meeting last week, I tried muting all, and then when I tried to unmute all, I kept losing me as the participant. I mean, they couldn't hear me.
Wow.
It was very low. And I had, and other people sometimes didn't, like, it unmuted, but it didn't actually work. So I was going, I think I might just, if there's a few number of people, I might just do the, it's pretty easy to go, just to go down the microphones and click on them. I tried, it was weird. And if you mute all, you have to remember you muted yourself too.
Thanks, Doug. I just found that out last Sunday when I muted all. I had muted Monica.
Yeah.
And so
Whoops.
you figure that out the hard way. So I was scrambling to try and unmute Monica a couple times, and I think you're right. If it's a small group, Doug, then maybe just looking like I'm monitored, because sometimes people unmute themselves and then you hear that background noise while Monica's in the midst of something in the service. You kind of got to go and mute them again, right?
I've been turning off our video during the services because there's no need. People need to be concentrating and looking at what Monica's doing or who's ever leading the service and not be distracted by the other. I don't think you can unmute all. I don't think you can unvideo everybody except, well, you can do it through the clicking. You can go down the camera and turn off the cameras.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting observation. And, Zoom is not perfect, and sometimes there are glitches. There was one time I thought I was muted and I wasn't, and so I was knitting because, like Mavis, you're lifting weights. Sometimes I knit to keep my hands down and off my face because I am one of these people that like to touch, and of course we're not supposed to do that anymore. So I'm knitting away, and every time my knitting needles clicked, and they were very soft because they're wooden, so they're not making a loud, my screen would pop up, and it would be popping and popping and popping. So that was a bit of a pain. Share screen is a lot of fun. I can set it to one participant sharing at a time, or multiple participants can share simultaneously, which can get a little headachy. And again, there's an advanced sharing option. But one of the things I wanted to show was, and there's pause and record, stop recording, of course. There's breakout rooms, which we haven't done. And if we were a big enough congregation, say if there was 40 of us, 30 of us for a worship service one Sunday, it would be really nice to just open up the breakout rooms, say we want 5 rooms, and then they would automatically put people into rooms. So I could actually do this and create rooms, and I can assign them.
Where are you doing that, Monica?
That is in the host has got the ability to make breakout rooms. So when you wave your magic mouse, right along the bottom where the share screen is and the pause stop recording, there's also a breakout room.
I think that's only in the host, not the co-host.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not
Yeah.
co-host.
So I'm going to just do that for 2 seconds.
Oh, now we see breakout rooms. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to close all rooms because I don't really want you to go there. But Yeah. So I want to share. So you can share a screen, and we've been doing that already. And then there's this wonderful thing called a whiteboard, which is a lot of fun. I can type things. Type things and notes. So you can
Is
see
that a
that I'm
host thing
typing.
too?
That's part of screen sharing. I can draw.
Oh, okay.
So you can take
Oh,
notes.
there.
Careful now.
And this is what some of the Zoom bombers were using. So it's kind of important for us to know what that works like. And here's an eraser. Okay, so, and it erases everything. And you can clear all drawings. And then I'm going to stop sharing. So that's kind of fun. So if you click screen share, it'll open up everything that you could share. And one of the things is a whiteboard. And again, that might be for people who are hosts. There's an advanced section there which allows you to share a portion of your screen, allows you to share music or computer sound only, or even share from content from a second camera. That might be something to get Tim to play around with for Robbie. And files. So that's a lot of fun. And then second last, we've got reactions button down there.
Thumbs up,
So you
thumbs
can clap, you can do a thumbs up. Oh, good job, everybody. And then for the host, we have this more button, and I'm still trying to figure out how this works. Live on Facebook, and I have not been able to get that to work. What happens for me anyways, it goes live for about 5 minutes and then it crashes, and I haven't figured that out. And I have a few techie people in the United Church I'm going to talk to, hopefully before Sunday. See if we can get that happening. That's one of the plates that I want to spin because I feel confident in the plates that I've already gotten. We'll see what happens. All right. So,
The other thing that happens with beginners is you have to teach them that, and this was very confusing for Phil, is that the word underneath the microphone and underneath the video are for the command that's coming that you can do if you click on it, not what the current situation is.
yeah.
If it says mute, it says, if you look at the little thing, it looks like it says mute. And so you then think that you're actually muting. Then when you click it, the red line goes across and it says unmute. And so people think that they're actually able to talk when that's why some of I think that's why some of these people ask whether or not they can be heard, but it can be really confusing the way they've done this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing with the video one.
I think everybody is good at chatting already. You all know where the chat function is, so we won't go there. This whole screen that I'm showing you right now, I did on that whiteboard, including adding the little race car in the bottom corner. Ooh,
Oh.
Not bad, eh? And then I just did
Very
a
good.
screen capture. Tim taught me how to screen capture this week.
Very good.
So just a little note, probably not going to affect you folks too much, but for me, there have been days when I've been on a Zoom meetings for like 3-4 hours. Zoom fatigue is real, and it's from multiple busy backgrounds. Like if you look at us right now, if we were in a meeting in real life, the 4 of us would be, the 5 of us, the 6 of us would be in the winding trail room. There's one background. Because we have 4 different screens plus the reality that I am in, so my office, there's actually 4 different backgrounds that we're looking at, and that can add a lot of busyness to our brains. We are not trained to be in more than one room at a time. This is all new for all of us. We look for nuances and nonverbal cues. When one person is speaking around in a circle, everyone looks at that person. It's natural. But here I can still look at all 4 of you on the screen automatically. And Zaverna. So I'm actually looking at more people right now than I would if I was in an in-person meeting, surprisingly enough. And because everyone is looking at the speaker, that tends to make us all look to that one speaker. So it's a natural feedback loop. The Zoom green screens can feel odd. And we are not able to see the twitching of the eyebrow that says, oh, so-and-so is bored, or someone suppressing a giggle, or someone's shoulders getting higher to show that they're getting stressed. All those little kind of nuances and nonverbal cues are completely missing in a way. And the technology malfunctions do not help our stress levels. Is this thing on? It's not working. How come it's not going on mute? Just too much screen time overall. And we're already highly anxious. This is just one more thing that we have to focus on. This is coming from USA Today, so this is not a junk thing. This is actually real. From having to focus on 15 people at once in gallery view, or worrying about how you appear as you speak. Oh, my hair, my bangs are in front of my eyes again. A number of things may cause someone to feel anxious or worried on a video call. Any of these factors require more focus and mental energy than a face-to-face meeting might, said Vale Wright, the American Psychological Association's Director of Clinical Research and Quality. So, you know, when I have to really watch it, and I know that if I have 3 Zoom meetings on a Thursday afternoon, Thursday morning, I'm not going to go to my writers group, or I'm not going to go to the book club, or I'm unfortunately not going to go to Toastmasters. I've been missing far too much Toastmasters because of the Zoom fatigue. And it's very comforting to know that it's not a figment of my imagination. And that's all I've got on Zoom, folks.
That's a great start. Thank you.
Yeah. So about the only other thing we have left is to think about times and weeks that work for us. And again, if we have maybe 2 live worship services a month, and we've got half of them scheduled already, so really it's just 1 live worship service a month. For those of you who want to do a full service, I've still got all the same resources that we had last summer and the stuff that we talked about in Worship 101. And of course, like I said, if you want to make a stew or a casserole instead of meat and potatoes, sky's the limit. If we want to just say, you know what, that's too many spinning plates, let's just host a watch party. And we'll all go to McClure, and then we'll go to McDougall, and we'll go to Grace, and we'll go to St. Paul's, and we'll go to Southminster Steiner, and we'll go to, I mean, there's so many churches right now that are doing this. And I will host on such and such a day, or I will host on such and such a day. That's fine too.
Yeah, I feel like I'm reaching the end of my attentiveness for a meeting. So
Yep.
Are we okay to kick the
I-
can down the road a bit
Yeah.
there, you guys?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for Monica.
Sure.
Like written down from before. Okay, if people are going to be, well, I guess what I'd like to know is how much is Tim are going to be continuing to be involved? Is he willing to continue to help with production? And there's also equipment that you have there, like and if he is going to be able to keep using the little webcam you have, that's great. But I mean, I don't know what his willingness or involvement is going to be. So we need to either talk to him or if I don't know if you know or not, or so some of this we need to know how we, and if he's not going to be involved with it, we need to know how to do the setup because we don't know how. And the other, so that's one question. And you talked about CCLI license information. Do we have to be logged in to read that, or to be able to find the hymns, or how
Oh.
does all that work?
So there's, I'll answer that question first because that's the easier one. So
Yeah.
you can go to something called, if you search for Song Select on the internet, CCLI Song Select, you can actually type in the name of the song and find out if it's covered. So, for example, Gene McClellan, Put Your Hand in the Hand of the Man Who Stilled the Water, and Leonard Cohen's Alleluia are both covered. Who knew? But we also have a list, like a file, a computer file, Excel spreadsheet that has a list of all the hymns too. So you can look it up numerically. So you can do both ways. Unfortunately, my two favorite songs right now, Stand By Me and Lean On Me, are not in CCLI. Dang it all. So those are the two ways you can do that, or you can phone Verna up and say, can you look it up on our list if we've got this song? And she will say, I'll just go through the file and number 352, yes, you can use that. Number 353, no, you can't use that. And then that's that. And we also have a separate file that also lists everything that's in public domain. So like Amazing Grace and This Little Light of Mine, you can use that as many times as you want. Not a problem because they're old enough that they're public domain. So that's two different ways. So just about everything that you want to know, you can find out two different ways. So that's that bit. Tim would love to be asked what he would like to do. He's been wondering if anyone's going to ask him. And he's not quite sure what his answer is going to be, but he doesn't want to be voluntold. And he would really like to be asked. So I don't know what his answer would be, but I know he doesn't want to be asked by yours truly.
No, I will talk to him.
That would
I
be
told him I was going to phone him in because I had some tech questions and I got busy on Monday night and I didn't do that. So I will.
Doug, in addition to equipment questions, is he willing to continue as Robbie?
Yeah, that's the other part of the
really
question.
Important to people.
Yeah, exactly.
They're really appreciating Robbie right now.
Yes, yes, that was definitely a question for him. Okay, I will talk. I will try to. I will make some time.
that sounds wonderful. I think he'd really appreciate being asked. And as far as the equipment, so as far as the equipment is concerned, we don't have to do it from the church. You have the equipment that you need to do worship right in your own home. I think just about all of you have a candle. And if you don't have a candle, you can ask Saverna to leave one on the doorstep or in the entryway of Nance if it's a rainy day. And we've got spare matches. You don't even need a Bible because there's Bibles online. We have all the resources, like you've got the scriptures right there. Use them if you want, don't use them if you don't want. So you don't need any equipment. If you want to do it from the church itself, you bring your laptop. I would strongly recommend, we have a blue phone cable here that plugs into the modem, and it's set, we've got a table set up right now, and plug the laptop in. Do not trust the Wi-Fi here. It is going in and out like a yo-yo. It is driving Saverna and myself nuts because 1 minute we're sending emails or we're talking to someone on Zoom and the next minute we're dead in the water. We can't do anything and we can't go anywhere. We can't even send something to our printer. That's how bad it is. And then 3 minutes later, back up again. 5 minutes later, crashes. Plug it into your
That's
phone.
not good.
I mean, plug it into your laptop. There's a little, most of you still have that in your laptop.
Yep.
And you can use the camera that is in on your computer. That's what we started out with. We just used the camera that was on our computer. We can leave we have a spare camera that we've been using. It plugs into the laptop. And we can also leave the microphone, my Rock Band microphone. I don't want to lose it, folks. I mean, it was a whole $15. And that also plugs into a USB port.
Yeah.
But feel free
You
to
were, yeah.
do it from your own home. That's okay too.
Yeah. All right. So it's partly up to the people who are leading the service as to what they want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned also about the moderator service. You said, is it not happening anymore, or?
It is not happening anymore because there are so many
Oh.
churches across Canada that are doing it.
Okay. Would you have any kind of a list of those other churches or ones that you might suggest? I'm thinking in particular that Pentecost might be one that we decide we want to go join somebody who has it all organized with all the, because there's, so many sort of things around that and make sure it happens.
Yeah.
So,
There's actually a church live stream finder on the United Church of Canada's website page. So I will send you the link to that. But
that would be useful.
I'm
Yeah.
feeling, like Mike, I'm feeling a little zoomed out. This has been a lot of information I threw at you.
Yeah.
So some of us are
Well,
going to.
those are all my questions.
Okay. Some of
Yeah,
us.
those were all my questions. Yeah.
Some of us are going to meet on Thursday, and we can talk a little further about that. And I will,
Yeah.
if I don't send the email out to you with that information tomorrow, just send me an email and remind me, because I'm kind of a little on the emotionally shortchanged side because my son just got out of the hospital today. So he just got
Oh, what was wrong with him? What was him?
half an hour ago. He broke his elbow in a motorcycle crash.
Oh, right. You said that. Yeah. Yeah.
So he just got out of the
Oh.
hospital after a week.
Oh.
Nobody
Oh,
ever
prayers
stays
for
in the
him.
hospital for a week.
Oh, prayers for him and you.
Thanks. All right. So just a prayer.
She was muted and she was just saying something. There we go.
Something that I'm wondering about in planning services is, would it be okay to have one person do the message sermon part and somebody else to do all of the
Sure.
rest? Because I find that is much easier than doing everything.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's there's no formula. Anybody whoever wants to lead the service and they want, whatever, if you want to bring in somebody, you want to do something different, you want to have a video for a sermon, you want to do whatever, it's totally up to the people. There's no obligation that the person leading the service has to do. Or you can have 3 people do it, and you do the first part, and Susan, Mike does the next 3 parts, and Margaret does the next part. You can share it however you want. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I strongly recommend partner up, folks.
Oh yeah, it works nice.
Tim and I can't do the service and the technology and the Robbie script and the hosting. It was just too much. And so we're really appreciative of people who have stepped forward to share the load and share the work. And if you want to play a TED talk, I don't know. I don't want to hear about it. I don't know about copyright for that. So I'm not listening. So yeah. And if you're
some things you can do.
Get someone else to co-host.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You really need more than one person on. Yeah, for sure.
Wow, lots to think about. Thank you.
All right then.
Informative meeting.
And-
We'll be in
Great.
touch.
Thank you very much.
So let's have a prayer. And I will try and have this recording available for folks if you need to listen to it again. Oh, holy God. Going into sabbatical is scary for me, and it's hopefully a wonderful opportunity for you folks. So God, be with Mavis, Margaret, Mike, our handsome librarian, and Severna. Help us to know that together we are going to be amazing, and we are going to be in connection with you, oh God, and you are going to sparkle in our lives unexpectedly with rainbows when we least plan for it or hope for it. You are going to show yourself present with us. Help us to continue to connect with ourselves, with our neighbors, with our friends, with our community. Help us to be that loving presence that everyone so desperately needs right now. Help us to remember that we are the lighthouse shining a new light of new hope on this world in this troubled time. So God, strengthen and bless Mavis, strengthen and bless Margaret, strengthen and bless Mike, strengthen and bless Doug, strengthen and bless Severna, and bless us all this day and evermore.
Bless Monica as well.
In the name of your Son, Jesus, who loved us all like children of yours. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Monica, for organizing this and doing it. And bless you too.
Thank you. And two last things. Don't forget to stop recording. And don't forget to end the meeting, because if you just leave the meeting and you try and start the meeting up again, then it'll say the meeting's already going and then nobody can get in.
Oh,
Good to know.
But that's only the host.
Yeah, but I've done it and I've gotten into trouble. So make sure that if you're hosting, stop recording, which I'm doing now, and
Okay.
end meeting. Night, everybody.
Could you
Thank
end?
you.
Leaving stars.
okay. All right.
Good night. Night. I'll
Okay.
leave. Bye.
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 Okay.
Bye.